In a shocking development, Pakistan has declared an open war against Afghanistan. Pakistan's Defense Minister Khwaja Asif has posted on X stating that Pakistan's patience with regard to the Afghan Taliban has started wearing thin. And in the last 24 hours, very serious border escalation has taken place between the two countries. So, this development has serious implications for the stability of the region and as well as for India's interests. So, in this context, in this short video, we will try to dissect this development. We will try to understand the history of tensions between Pakistan and Afghanistan. We will talk about the geography and the geopolitics of the place. We'll also understand the relations and the eventual tensions between the Pakistani deep state and the Taliban. We will discuss the role of the TTP, the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, and we will finally understand what does this mean for India's interests. So before we start, I have a couple of important announcements. Unacademy is providing a 60% off on all its IAS courses. So this is an opportunity for you to enroll for our program, and you can avail our subscription at just 19,999 along with double validity and CSE Assure. I'm told this offer will end tomorrow, and under double validity you will get a free extension. Let's say you take a 6-month subscription, you will get a 6-month free extension. The same applies for 9, 12, and 18-month subscription as well. Under CSE Assure, if you avail a subscription of more than 18 months, and let's say for some reason you don't clear the examination in your first attempt, then your next attempt is entirely on us. So those interested, please check out the details in the description box below. On the subscription page, you will see a different price. So to avail the discounted offer, you need to enter the code IAS English. The other important announcement is that to help Prelims 2026 aspirants to cover the PIB articles of the last 1 year, I'll be conducting two important special classes today and tomorrow. On the 27th and 28th of February, I'll be taking these two free special classes on the Unacademy app from 8:30 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. If you look at previous prelims question papers, you will see that a lot of questions have been directly asked by UPSC from PIB articles. So this would be a complete summary, a complete revision of all the important PIB articles from January 2025 to January 2026. The link for these two sessions is also provided in the video description below. So now let's come back to our discussion. So first, let's understand how did these fresh clashes begin between Pakistan and Afghanistan. The last Sunday, Pakistan carried out serious airstrikes along the border areas, especially in the eastern parts of Afghanistan. For example, at the Nangarhar province, that's located right next to Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and as well as at Paktika or Paktia province. So Pakistan claimed that it was trying to hunt down the TTP terrorists who are being sheltered in Afghanistan by the Taliban regime. I'm sure you must have noticed in news reports that in recent weeks, the TTP has been carrying out major terror attacks against Pakistan. There have been repeated bombings from Islamabad to the Baloch region and as well as in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa around the Peshawar region. And Pakistan has blamed these attacks on the TTP or the Pakistan Taliban. Pakistan accuses the Taliban regime, the Afghan Taliban in Afghanistan, for sheltering the TTP terrorists. So Pakistani Air Force and along with the army, with the backing of the ISI, carried out cross-border operations, including airstrikes, and Pakistan claimed that it had killed a number of terrorists. But however, ground reports contradict the Pakistani claims. The locals have reported that many civilians, including women and children, were killed in these Pakistani airstrikes. So the Taliban regime in Afghanistan, of course, doesn't take such violation of its sovereignty lightly, and it started retaliating. And over the past couple of days, the Afghan forces, though they are rudimentary forces, they have mounted serious attacks against Pakistani border positions from the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa belt all the way till the Baloch region. Across the border at key crossing points, Taliban has mounted major attacks, and Afghan Taliban has claimed that they have even captured several Pakistani soldiers and important Pakistani border locations. For example, at the Tomrak border crossing, major fighting was reported between the Taliban forces and the Pakistani army. Then even at Spin Boldak, at the Chamak or the Chaman crossing that leads towards Quetta in Balochistan, large scale fighting was reported, and Afghan Taliban has claimed to have killed several Pakistani soldiers. Though Pakistan disputes the claims, one thing is for sure, the conflict has indeed escalated over the last 4 to 5 days. And now that Pakistan has declared an open war, there is every possibility of the conflict escalating even further. Now, in order to understand why this is happening, we need to go back in time, look at the history of the region, and understand the geography and the geopolitics of the region. Now, when you look at Pakistan and Afghanistan, they are divided by this border known as the Durand Line, which was established in 1893 between then British India and the Emirate of Afghanistan. So, as the British retreated from Afghanistan, this boundary was drawn, the Durand Line, which essentially divided the Pashtun community. The Pashtuns, who are the natives of this region, you find them primarily in southern and eastern parts of Afghanistan, and you also find Pashtuns across the border in Pakistan as well, in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and the tribal belt that you see here in the Waziristan region, and as well as towards the Baloch region. So the Pashtun community here never accepted this division that was a result of colonial divide and rule policy. So post independence, after decolonization, that is after the establishment of Pakistan, the Pashtun community rejected the Durand Line as the international border between Afghanistan and Pakistan. So there is a long history of tensions and counterclaims and conflict being present all along the Durand Line. Then, as you know, Pakistan, which started using terrorism as a weapon against India and started engaging in covert proxy war against India, it has used the border areas and the weak border security along the region to exploit this to its advantage. It has set up large lot of its terror infrastructure primarily in the tribal belt over here, which until recently was an autonomous region known as FATA, federally administered tribal areas. But now it has been carved out as a province of Pakistan, the KP or Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. So this is where the terror hotbed is located. And even across the Baloch border here, Pakistan has cultivated the entire terror ecosystem, from radical madrasas to the training facilities where the radical elements are brainwashed, indoctrinated, and provided advanced military grade training. And most of the anti-India terror groups, be it Jaish-e-Mohammed, Hizbul Mujahideen, Lashkar-e-Toiba, they all have a presence over here. This is where even terror groups like Al-Qaeda and different factions of Taliban have been operating from many decades. So as you can see, the Af-Pak border region is essentially the epicenter of global terrorism. And this is something which directly affects India as well. Whatever happens in Afghanistan has had a direct link with India's security and stability. And this goes all the way back to 1980s. In 1979, when Soviet Union annexed Afghanistan and toppled the regime and invaded the country, the United States saw this as an opportunity during the Cold War period. The US aligned with Pakistan and they launched a covert proxy war against the Soviet forces by radicalizing the Pashtuns and by supporting the Mujahideen insurgency, which led to the formation of the Afghan Mujahideen. The Afghan Mujahideen would fight against the occupying Soviet forces, and Pakistan thus became pivotal for American strategic ambitions in the region, mainly to curtail and counter the communist and Soviet influence. So Pakistan used this to its advantage in the 1980s to create a strategic depth in Afghanistan. Pakistan realized that if it maintains influence and controls the establishment in Kabul, it could use Afghan territory and Afghan soil to target India. After Pakistan had lost three back to back conflicts with India, Pakistan had adopted the strategy to bleed India with 1,000 cuts. And it followed a traditional military doctrine of using strategic depth in case India were to attack from the east. Then Pakistan could push its troops and key assets to the west towards the Afghan border to secure them, to safeguard them. But this traditional military doctrine has now been transformed into a covert proxy doctrine against India, where Afghan territory has been used to breed anti India terror groups. So, when the Khalistan movement was raging in Punjab in the 80s, it was Pakistan's deep state, the ISI, which created the direct links between the terror ecosystem along the Durand Line and Khalistani terror groups that were targeting India. Then came the Kashmir insurgency and terrorism. And Pakistan again created the same link, sheltering some of these anti India terror groups along the Af-Pak border. It even introduced the Mujahideen into Jammu and Kashmir to target India in the late 1980s. So as Soviet Union was defeated and eventually Soviet troops retreated from Afghanistan by late 1980s, Pakistan realized that it was succeeding in its larger agenda. And when a civil war had broken out in Afghanistan between different warlords and the Mujahideen leaders, Pakistan cultivated a new entity, the Taliban, a radical student led outfit primarily made up of the Pashtuns from the Kandahar belt. And it cultivated this organization as a radical student organization, which turned into a political insurgent outfit. So, under the leadership of the one eyed Sheikh or Mullah Omar, the ISI and the Pakistani deep state gave complete support to the Taliban, which was formed in 1994, and it succeeded in capturing power in Afghanistan in 1996. Now, this was seen as a big strategic victory for Pakistan, as Pakistan saw the Taliban as a puppet, as a regime it could control, it could manipulate, and use Afghan territory and soil to cultivate the anti India terror groups. So, this strategy was working well for Pakistan. But in 2001, when Al Qaeda carried out the 9/11 attacks against the United States, the US declared a global war on terrorism and invaded Afghanistan because the Taliban regime refused to cooperate with the US and its allies to hunt Al Qaeda, which was responsible for the 9/11 attacks. So, as the US led war began and Taliban regime was toppled through the US invasion, Pakistan sheltered the Taliban fighters, including Al Qaeda terrorists. It safely evacuated them before the US invasion and gave safety and protection for the Taliban and even Al Qaeda terrorists. In fact, Pakistan even facilitated Quetta, the capital of Balochistan, to become the new base of operations for Taliban. And this is where the Quetta Shura under Mullah Omar used to operate. So, for 2 decades, as US led NATO forces were fighting Taliban and Al Qaeda in Afghanistan, Pakistan was playing this double game. On one side, it appeared to be on the side of the US, assisting them in their counter terror operations. But on the other side, it was essentially backstabbing them, playing a role of duplicity and working with Taliban and the other related factions and elements to basically further its own agenda. So in 2021, eventually, when NATO forces had pulled out and US withdrew following the deal with Taliban, Pakistan saw this as a huge victory for itself. In fact, when the Taliban was formed in 94, it was then ISI chief Hamid Gul who was considered as the godfather of Taliban. That was the level of control and influence that Pakistan's deep state exercised on the Taliban. So they were hoping that the new Taliban regime in 2021 would again be a puppet regime, which they could use to target India. But however, post 2021, the current Taliban regime has been very, very different. Different in a sense that they are asserting the sovereignty. They want to ensure that they have full authority and control in Afghan soil and Afghan territory. And they don't want to be seen as a subordinate of the Pakistani deep state. So the Taliban currently has become uncomfortable for the Pakistani deep state. And that is the primary source of friction and tensions between them. Now, this is where you need to understand what is the TTP or Pakistan Taliban. This is the Pakistani faction of the Taliban. See, Taliban's stated goal is essentially to topple the regimes in Afghanistan and Pakistan and to form an Islamic emirate to enforce the strict Sharia. And that is their primary objective. Just like Afghan Taliban captured power in Afghanistan in 1996 and again in 2021 and has established an Islamic emirate enforcing the Sharia, a similar dream is envisioned by the TTP. The TTP was born in 2007, founded by Baitullah Masood, one of the former Mujahideen members. So the opposition here is against the Pakistani state itself. As they say, if you breed extremism and terrorism, eventually it will come back to bite you. Right? You can't breed snakes in your backyard and you can't expect them not to bite you. So eventually, Pakistan has been paying the price for cultivating an entire ecosystem of radicalism and terrorism. The TTP is one such byproduct. So it mainly opposes and targets the Pakistani state, the government, the army, the ISI. It wants to topple the state itself and capture state power to form an Islamic emirate in Pakistan. So since 2007, Pakistan has been facing a serious security challenge, especially in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa belt. and extending towards Balochistan and Punjab region as well. And it has carried out many, many such attacks in the past. So in 2021, when Taliban came back to power, Afghan Taliban had actually mediated a ceasefire between TTP and the Pakistani state. Now, this ceasefire of 2021 broke down very soon by 2022 as Pakistan started mistreating the Pashtuns, the Afghan refugees. Pakistan was hoping that Afghan Taliban would just be a puppet regime and it would simply listen to the diktats of the Pakistani establishment. So when Afghan Taliban started asserting itself, asserting its sovereignty, its independence and autonomy, Pakistani deep state obviously did not like that. So they targeted the Afghan refugees in the border areas, primarily the Pashtuns, forcefully sending them back. And they even started closing the border crossing points to prevent any further movement of the Pashtuns. So this had an impact on the Taliban and its core support base in the Kandahar region, which comes from the Pashtun community. So as a result, the tension started increasing between them. The ceasefire that Afghan Taliban had brokered between TTP and Pakistan broke down, and TTP started carrying out its attacks. And in the last 3 to 4 years, Pakistan has witnessed multiple terror incidents which are executed by the TTP. So this has led Pakistan to retaliate as Pakistan accuses the Afghan Taliban regime of sheltering the TTP because both factions of Taliban, they are like brother entities or brother organizations. They're ideologically aligned, ethnically connected. So Afghan Taliban has given that sort of support. It has given a safe haven, provided for arms supplies, and given some encouragement and support, and started using it as a proxy to target the Pakistani state. So Pakistan in the last 3 4 years has conducted many such military operations. It has carried out cross-border ground operations across the border, targeting local villages. It has even killed a number of civilians and it claims it has killed only terrorists. It has even carried out large-scale airstrikes, and this has escalated the tensions as Afghan Taliban is reasserting its identity, its sovereignty, and it's countering the violations of its sovereignty by Pakistan. So last year, we saw one such big escalation in 2025 when a major conflict broke out in the month of October. Pakistan stated it was trying to hunt the leader of TTP, Noor Masood, who was hiding in Kabul, and large scale airstrikes were carried out. And Afghan Taliban retaliated with targeted ground operations and artillery and rocket fire. And this escalated very quickly. So back then, the other major powers like Qatar, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, they intervened. They acted as mediators and they had worked out a ceasefire between the Afghan Taliban and Pakistan. But experts had believed that this ceasefire is not likely to last, given the extent of mutual distrust between Afghan Taliban and Pakistani deep state. It was only a matter of time before this could break down. And as expected, it has recurred again. So now the concern here is Pakistan conveniently blames these attacks on India. It calls TTP as a proxy of India. It has even alleged that India's intelligence agency, Research and Analysis Wing, has often been colluding with Afghanistan to sponsor and back the TTP. Now, this is not a new allegation. It goes back to 2007, 2008, when India had fantastic relations with the then Afghan government, the civilian government in Afghanistan. So back then, Pakistan would accuse India's RAW of colluding with Afghan intelligence agency NDS to sponsor groups like TTP to target Pakistan. But there has been no element of truth in it. India rejects these allegations. Pakistan has never been able to present even a shred of evidence to prove any Indian involvement. Pakistan was basically essentially against Indian presence in Afghanistan, India's investments and projects and growing diplomatic presence in the country. So these accusations had already created a sort of a problem and a friction. And now Pakistan is bringing it back, given the fact that India has started engaging with Taliban directly post 2021. And especially last year, Taliban's foreign minister, Amir Khan Mutaki, visited India. And after that, a couple of Taliban ministers, the health and commerce ministers, have visited. And India has been strengthening its ties with Taliban, including strategic ties. So this is something which causes a lot of discomfort for Pakistan. Even during Operation Sindoor, Afghan Taliban stood with India and condemned Pakistan for its involvement with terrorism. So this is something which worries Pakistan today. And it conveniently blames all the internal problems on other neighbors like India and Afghanistan. So India rejects these accusations And even during the latest round of clashes, India has backed Afghan Taliban and supported Afghan sovereignty. Pakistan being the state sponsor of terrorism, it has been called out accordingly by India. And India has said that Pakistan needs to deal with its internal problems before blaming the neighboring countries. So, now what does this mean for the region? Will the war extend? Would the conflict escalate even further? And what would be the outcome of such a conflict? See, when you compare the firepower of Pakistan and Afghan Taliban, clearly there is a big asymmetry. Pakistan is a formidable military force with nuclear assets, with a very strong army and air force as well, right? Whereas Afghan Taliban remains a very rudimentary force, still relying on methods of insurgency, and primarily it doesn't really have an air force of its own, doesn't really have major military assets. But however, it does pack a punch which can cause significant damage to Pakistan as well. So, in case of a further escalation, definitely Pakistan will gain an upper hand with regard to its ability to carry out large scale major strikes. For example, according to reports, in the last few hours, Pakistan has launched airstrikes on Kabul and Kandahar. So, Pakistan can sustain those operations. It can even cause significant damage along the border areas and deep inside Afghanistan as well. Right? But however, the Afghan Taliban has its own cards up its sleeve. It can easily engineer a bigger insurgency in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, reaching the deeper hinterlands of Pakistan. It can even engage with the TTP and mount large scale attacks inside Pakistan, given the network it has built, along with mounting serious strikes on the border areas. Particularly, the border positions, the checkposts can be targeted, as has been reported in the news reports. Right? Pakistan can cause significant damage to the Pakistani army positions and even strike deep through the networks that it has built and carry out large scale terror strikes, which could cripple and weaken Pakistan internally. Now, this would only aggravate the internal security problem. Pakistan is already dealing with a huge crisis in the Baloch region, right? And if the TTP were to escalate the attacks in direct collusion with Afghan Taliban, then that would pose a very serious threat, a possible detrimental threat to the very existence of the Pakistani state. But however, it's very clear that in terms of military might, Pakistan clearly will have an upper hand. But of course, a conflict like this would not be allowed to escalate beyond a certain point. There are many regional and global stakeholders who will intervene, starting with Saudi Arabia, which has recently entered into a mutual defense pact with Pakistan, where they promise collective defense. So now, if Afghan Taliban were to attack Pakistan, Saudi Arabia is supposed to consider that as an attack on Saudi Arabia itself and come to the defense of Pakistan. Now, whether this mutual defense agreement will come into action is something we need to wait and watch, because this will again have implications for India. But don't forget, Saudi Arabia also has very close ties with the Afghan Taliban. In fact, it had played a very big role in 80s and 90s to back the Mujahideen. Right? So Saudi Arabia would definitely try to tone down the tensions, de-escalate, and convince both sides to take a step back. Then other regional powers like Qatar and Turkey, which have big stakes in the region, which have already acted as a mediator and brokered a ceasefire last year, they would try to step in and bring back the ceasefire between both sides. And however, United States under Donald Trump, who loves to act as a peace broker and mediator, right, who loves to claim the Nobel Peace Prize, he would love to definitely step in, given the American interest in the region and the proximity Trump has developed with Shahbaz Sharif and Asim Munir. You might definitely see a US intervention as well to try and mediate the conflict. So, this for India could mean prolonged instability. Any crisis along the Durand line could easily escalate, and a deterioration of the security situation could create a more fertile ground for radicalism and extremism to flourish. So, India diplomatically will side with Afghan Taliban given the improved relations that we have. But however, India would exercise restraint. India would not seek any direct intervention of sorts, be it any overt or covert intervention. But definitely, India would be extending some diplomatic moral support. Other than that, India could even try to use this opportunity to expose Pakistan at the global level, to expose Pakistan's involvement with terrorism. So these developments definitely can destabilize the entire region with significant impact on India's interests. This could even embolden other terror groups from Lashkar to Jaish-e-Mohammed, which could even change the security calculus with regard to India. So that's why India will keep a very close watch on the developments and would try to play a role when the time is right. So let's wait and watch as to how it will unfold. And we will follow this up with more videos to provide a detailed analysis of these key developments. So with this, I bring the analysis to an end. If you like the video, do press the like button, share the video with other aspirants, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.